Welcome to this community call of OWASP SAMM, already the first time for 2025. So if you're listening to this and it's the beginning of the year, Happy New Year. So as always, we have a small update of SAMM towards community. So I'll be touching on our latest version, which actually released already a couple of months ago, but just make sure that everybody knows that. We have a new upcoming questionnaire that I'll be sharing. We have some contributions from the community, which we're quite excited about. First of all, we have the SAMM skills framework, which I'll be doing a short explanation on, and maybe Maxime, I can also call upon you to provide a little bit of background there. And then some other work from the core team includes mapping SAMM to the latest Microsoft SDL and some model improvements. So with that, first of all, if you were not familiar and you were wondering what kind of version we are with OWASP SAMM, actually, if you look at the latest release notes, and which is on GitHub, the core model, we are currently at version 2.1. So previously we were at minor releases doing all kinds of bug fixes, but we did a wrap up of everything that we've created and shared and updated, not only on I would say the plumbing of the project, but everything around it, the guidance, the PDFs, and so on. And we wrapped that up in version 2.1. So currently we are at version 2.1. It took lots of guidance, the online training, the toolbox updates, and so on. So it's a full list. If you really want to know everything, there is the link here, and we'll also share the link here as part of the recording. We'll also add that to the YouTube comments. So first, that's something we wanted to share. It's not new. We've already done this in September, but not everybody is possibly aware of that. With that, next update, it's our yearly habit and to not only, well, we are putting a lot of effort into SAMM, but it is really a community-driven effort. And what we do from time to time is we launch what we call a survey or a questionnaire. And as always, this is going to be a questionnaire based on a Google form, which if you've responded to that earlier on during the last couple of years, you're probably familiar with that. So a couple of questions on background, which version you were on, how many assessments, and so on. So I'm not going to read it out, but we're going to be sharing this tomorrow with the community at large. And if you're using SAMM, if you have been using SAMM, I really encourage you to put, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes into this and share your input and feedback on our project. So there's a couple of questions to see also at the end. So what you'd like about it, how would you like to improve it, and so on. So would really appreciate your feedback and input there. So that's the questionnaire. Another thing is we're also quite excited to not only launch the skills framework, which we've actually already explained in the past, but we're drafting, and we have the draft right here, drafting a blog post, and this is not the one, this is the one. We're drafting a blog post on what we call the OWASP SAMM skills framework. Very short, what is the OWASP SAMM skills framework, but maybe there's a better person here in the call that can explain it for me. Maxime, do you care to provide like a short introduction in the OWASP SAMM skills framework?
Absolutely. So the OWASP SAMM skills framework came about, let's say, rolling out SAMM in very large organizations. In large organizations, you need a programmatic rollout of SAMM. And when you're doing that, it becomes quite hard to know who needs to pick up certain tasks. You often, especially again in large organizations, you often need to delegate some parts of maturing SAMM streams or some parts of SAMM activities. And knowing who needs to pick up what becomes increasingly complex as you drill down from very high level and say like, okay, well, this generic role can pick up this activity, until you then go and ask around to like 2 teams, 5 teams, 10 teams. In the end, you'll find out that the actual responsibility for maturing a certain SAM stream lies within a different role or different person within every organization or within every team. It was graciously, so basically Siemens came to us and asked, hey, we'd like to have a way to map SAM streams to roles and to responsibilities. Initially, the idea was to have like a RACI matrix, have an idea of which roles would be responsible for maturing certain activities in SAM. Proceeding insight learned us that it's not as easy as making a generic RACI matrix, and a framework was needed that helped teams determine the right people to tackle, to pick up work for SAM. And that's basically what the SAM skills framework is. It helps you determine who is involved in maturing a certain SAM stream, what skills this person needs to be successful, and then what training you can offer them. It goes way broader than just a RACI matrix, and it's way more adaptable than a RACI matrix. If you're a startup and you're looking at in SAM, I don't think it's very useful, just maybe to have a conversation about this. But if you're especially in a large organization, this I believe is worth looking into. It doesn't just help you delegate maturing certain practices or streams to the right people. It also helps you visualize shared responsibilities. So that's like a second benefit of using the framework. If you have platform teams, or if you have like a shared DevOps teams or an infrastructure team that manages part of your builds or part of your hosting, by completing the SAM skills framework, it visualizes that certain responsibilities actually lay outside of the team, for example, doing SAM. And it helps you facilitate conversations with other teams that you depend on. And it helps you make this relation or make this shared responsibility model explicit. Imagine that you're in an organization that has a DevOps team that manages your build infrastructure, and you're doing a SAM assessment of a development team, and they say, well, we're relying on the DevOps team to fully secure our build pipelines and harden everything on the build infrastructure. Often this is an assumption. So you go to that DevOps team and you ask them like, okay, what are you responsible for and what are you not responsible for? And by setting up this conversation, facilitated by this mapping of skills, by this mapping of responsibilities, you make this shared responsibility explicit. You visualize dependencies in the organization. It's a little bit more than a short introduction. And to be honest, it's hard to explain you the framework without running you fully through it. My suggestion is, if we go after this call, perhaps we'll share this in the group, and if you feel that this is of interest, have a look at the framework and just ask questions directly. I'll happily help you get started with it. There is a getting started guide, a separate getting started guide that explains in a little bit more detail how you get to work with it. And yeah, right now we're in a phase of what we're releasing right now is a very generic version, but it can certainly be improved. So if you feel that something is missing, if you feel that the generic mapping is off, I'm happy to have discussions with you about this.
All right, no, it's great. It's a great piece of work, and also we are extremely happy that so this was work that was done by a practitioner, but Siemens also was so graceful to donate this back in a generic format to the community, and we also have Paul who came to the SAM User Day in Lisbon last year. That had also shared with us a great quote on how SAM is quite useful for their organization. So that's really, really cool to see that and to see that feedback. This is probably something that we can dedicate a future podcast on. All right. with that, next topic. We have been, and not probably we, and especially Aram has been quite busy during the holiday season on adding more mappings. Aram, you're in the call. Maybe you can explain a little bit what you've been doing.
Yes. My voice is starting to go away, so I hope I can make it through a couple of slides. Basically, we have added a couple of mappings. Last time I talked about them, BSIM and IEC 62443.
62443, yes.
Yes, -4-1. There is a new one which we've added, which is Microsoft SDL. And for those who don't know, Microsoft SDL is actually the first formal secure SDLC framework that was introduced in 2004. And it was interesting to see how SAMM maps to their. I'm pretty sure this is an updated version. It is not from 2004. It was interesting to look at the latest updates. Seba, I don't need the slides though, because I don't remember them by heart. I don't know if you're sure. Yeah, thanks. And basically SDL is in SAMM we have 5 business functions, then they are split into security practices, streams, and activities. SDL has a less, I would say, as a more straightforward structure. It has 10 practices, and there are 51 items, which they don't really name. So I tried to find what is the term, what are they called? There is no name for them. So I call them requirements, and it's something that I just came up myself. Somehow I thought it's requirements, but then it ended up not being requirements, and I already used requirements everywhere. So it is less broad in terms of coverage. So SAMM, as you know, SAMM is an AppSec program, so it covers a lot of things like governance, which cross the boundaries of individual teams. SDL is largely focused on individual teams, although they do have some governance elements there as well, like setting up standards and education. I guess training is typically combined for the draw, and it's sort of the same through different teams, depending, of course, on the roles and responsibilities. Like I said, SDL is as a less broad focus, is a more smaller scoped, and it is focused mainly on the developer perspective. So if you look at it, it seems like it's more tuned towards developers. Now, typically, most of the mappings we've done are done at the level of streams, of SAMM streams, and this one is not an exception. But then for most mappings, we only have a crossover semantics, which means we just say, okay, these 2 elements are related without specifying what is the relationship type. For SDL, we have done a more semantically rich mapping where we've used some additional information to specify the type of relationship. And this is the list, as you can see here. Now, I'm not going to go through the list, but I will already tell you that 10 out of 51 items or requirements, whatever the name is, are equivalents. So 10 items from SDL. And equivalence means these are largely the same things, except they use sort of different wording or terminology. And most of the rest of the mappings are general specific. And it is sort of, this is one way to achieve that. And in simple words, Microsoft SDL items, when they map to some elements, to some streams, they don't really cover everything from the SAMM stream. An example is denial of service requirement, which we've mapped to requirements testing. And that's, for instance, stream B, where you also have things like fuzzing and abuse test cases, and denial of service and stress testing, which is not necessarily denial of service. Denial of service is just one part of that. In general, SDL seems to be a subset of SAMM. So we did map most SDL requirements to SAMM streams. And like I said, many of the mappings are generic specific, and only 10 out of them are equivalents. Now, 4 of these SDL requirements didn't really have a match in SAMM. I mean, we could have picked a stream and say, okay, they actually map. And I'm going to tell you some details here. So threat modeling resources, it's a requirement that just gives you a list of threat modeling resources. That's it. It doesn't tell you you should threat model. It just tells you here are some resources, which is a little bit strange, to be honest. It doesn't feel like it fits there. It doesn't feel like it should be an item. And then there are 3 requirements which seemed very specific. And these are the 3 requirements. So encrypt data in transit and at rest. There is an item on post-quantum cryptography and cryptographic agility, so that you can change the cryptographic primitives without changing your whole code. And these seem to be very specific requirements, which would fit more in ASVS standards. And I'm pretty sure some of them are in ASVS rather than in a higher level framework like SAMM. So they didn't really map, so they were left empty. SAMM streams, and then we'll also present sort of which SAMM streams are not in SDL. So what is not in SDL? So as I mentioned, SAMM is an AppSec program. So things like overall strategy, policies, and security champions programs, and there are a couple of more. It is normal not to see them in SDL, and they're largely missing from SDL. There are some items that are related to standards, but they don't cover most of these SAMM streams, or let's say the spirit of the SAMM streams. Supplier security, and this one is a little bit strange, although supplier security in SAMM is about your relationships with outsourced development. It's not about, so there are 2 streams that deal with supply chain risks and risk management. This is one of them, but this one deals not with third-party dependencies. It deals with actually outsourced development, making sure that your suppliers have the right processes in place. They are also using secure SDLC or maybe SAMM. And this indeed, to me, feels a little bit more like governance thing than an actual development thing. So your developers are unlikely to deal, at least from Microsoft's perspective, with your supplier relationships. But then things that are, then the last 2 items which are missing from SDL, and this is, I would say it's a little bit surprising, are defect management. I couldn't find anything on defect management in SDL, and also requirements testing. So requirements testing both sides, requirements testing of your security requirements, positive tests, so simple unit test, integration test, making sure that you have implemented your security requirements correctly. And then the negative side, so misuse, abuse cases, like I mentioned, fuzzing is not there. To the best of my knowledge now, I'm starting to wonder, maybe fuzzing is there. Definitely misuse and abuse test cases are not mentioned in SDL. Only denial of service is mentioned in SDL, but yeah, this is not updated yet, Seba. It needs to be, my pull request isn't confirmed.
But this is the one, eh? So you have
this is the Excel. It's also
some
combined
informative
Excel,
references,
so
with the SDL items,
and the mapping.
and then the mapping here. Yes. All
Yep.
right. No, great work. And I have to say it. I was familiar with one of the earlier versions of the Microsoft SDL. It has evolved, so there's more in there than I expected, but less than there should be. That's my impression.
Yeah, I also had that impression. It is also focused a lot on Microsoft's ecosystem, which is maybe a good thing if you're a Microsoft shop. It could help you get started, especially if you have not much going on. And if you're trying to adopt SAMM, you could start from SDL, for instance, and then evolve, because it's very concrete.
Okay, but no, it's for people or organizations that use Microsoft SDL or consider it. I think it's really useful to have this mapping, which to SAMM, and also through this mapping to other mappings as well. So great work, thank you. And then last but not least, we have been working quite a lot over the last couple of months during our current sprint. And one of the aspects that we're looking at is selecting potential improvements for the next release of SAMM. And Bart, maybe you can explain a little bit what we've been up to so far.
Yeah, sure. But maybe first a practical question. Seba, can you put this in slideshow mode? Pat is asking for that.
All right. Yes.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Perfect. Okay, so this indeed, so we're also with the core team really thinking about what can be improvements to the core model. and in doing that, these improvements might be potentially breaking changes to the model. So the model is also evolving. It has evolved from version 1 to version 2. With some changes, with quite some changes to the model. We introduced a new business function to the model, for instance. We're constantly thinking about, okay, how can do we need to further improve the model based on the feedback that we get, based on our own experiences, and so on and so forth. And so this is what this is about. So we're also considering potential improvements to the model in order to go towards version 3.0, which would mean that there might be indeed breaking changes in there. We don't want to do this too often. It's quite important for a model to be stable enough such that you as practitioners and organizations using it don't need to change too many times the version of the model that you're using. But from time to time, we feel that there are changes that are important enough that would warrant changes to the model to introduce backwards incompatible changes to the model. And that's what we're talking about here. So we have actually identified quite some elements that could be considered as potential improvements to the model. These have been represented as issues in the GitHub repositories. And we've been working on detailing what this would mean in terms of explaining what we want to do, but also voting on how important do we think this is. And this is actually what you see here is an excerpt of the results of the ordered list of issues that we think about tackling in a potential new version of the model. So this is currently a list of changes that we think we would be implementing at least the first X amount of issues. Currently, we're thinking about the issues from, let's say, 4 to 16 to give an idea. So the first 10 to 12 issues, these are issues that we really think we want to tackle in a future version. But we're still actually considering, should we enlarge or make the list smaller of issues? But in doing that, we definitely also want to get input from the community. And so it would be very interesting for us to understand, okay, based on the issues that we have identified, are there currently issues that have been already identified that we're currently not considering, where you think as a practitioner that it's really important for you to be included in model improvements? Then we would really like to know. Likewise, it might be the case that you're actually struggling with parts of the model, or you think that the model is currently not covering a specific element, or a particular activity doesn't really make sense in the model according to you or according to your situation. Then we would really like to hear. So in that sense, if you think that there should be improvements to the model that we're currently not covering in issues, then we also would like to hear. So we're gonna send out a communication to ask for feedback in the coming weeks, and we're gonna take this into account as much as we can in doing the selection for the final list of improvements to be implemented in the model. The idea of the timing of this, that's interesting to also mention, is that we're looking for a new version of the model after the summer of this year. So in the next, let's say, 6 to 8 months, that's kind of the timing that we're currently looking at. It will also depend a bit on the final list of issues that will be selected in this new update. But that's currently the rough timing that we're thinking about. So it might be also interesting to take that into account in your feedback. So we're actually welcoming any feedback that you might have on this. And so we'll be sharing further information around the current list of issues that we're thinking about implementing in the upcoming version of SAMM.
All right, great. Thank you, Bart. And then with that, so obviously, if you're looking at this recording, it's if you have any questions, feedback, do get in touch. Also, if you want to join these kind of community calls, what we'll also do is we do live questions just after this recording. So that's so if you're looking at the recording, consider joining us next time. The way you join our community calls is by joining our meetup, which you should find a link to in our OWASP SAMM website. Also consider joining the Slack channel, the newsletter to get these kind of updates, and then we share everything on our YouTube channel. So with that, thank you very much for joining us here online.